Hello, and welcome to the panel, where we take a look at graphic novels and talk about their story, art, and everything in between. I'm pretty sure we all had to read Animal Farm in school when we were younger. Not only is the story still poignant to this day, but now the themes continue in Animal Castle. So get ready to take part in a revolution today on the panel. Joining me today, we have the Duchess of Free Comic Book Day, Ashton Greenwood.
Hey, howdy, hey. I'm really excited about this one.
And also, we have video content production manager, Johnny Rose.
Hey, howdy, hey!
Hey, that's my thing.
Sorry, I've been watching a lot of TikTok videos with Matt Berry on them.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you know who he is. He's like one of the vampires from What We Do in the Shadows.
Okay.
He's hilarious.
He's amazing. But yes, I'm all excited to talk about Animal Castle.
Yay! I'm excited that Johnny's here because normally he's behind the production and kind of behind everything, being quick draw with the graphics, and so it's fun to have him on here today. So.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, the citizens of Animal Republic, which is an abandoned castle that they've rebuilt as a farm, are growing tired of the tyranny of their ruler, President Silvio, along with his dog militia. They're forced to work hard and long hours for not enough food or shelter, which is given primarily to Silvio and his dogs. But when a wandering old rat tells a story of a human who stood against tyranny with peace instead of violence, it begins a growing change at the farm. Now, can a widowed mother cat of 2 and a bunny be enough to start a revolution?
We shall see.
Right. This was a deep read.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if y'all read that introduction, but even the introduction alone, I was like, oh, this is going to be.
Yeah, like, as soon as, like, it just, like, I felt like the introduction, before even any of the story happened, it just, like, snowballed. And, like, he talked about the importance of Animal Farm, and then into this. And then as soon as he started, like, with the MLK, Gandhi, Mandela bit, I was like, oh, my God, this is going to be a hard one.
It's pretty deep for a story about animals. This is no Disney story.
No, not at all.
No, this is a Don Bluth animation.
Yeah, we were talking, Mia, before you joined, Ashton. It was like, this is a story that's kind of along the lines, like, if it was an animated TV show or movie, it would be along the lines of, like, the Never-Ending Story, Secret of Nim, The Dark Crystal, something that would traumatize the youth of America, I think.
Important trauma, shared trauma.
Or Watership Down, too. It caused a lot of Watership Down vibes from this, too.
No, kids have it way too easy now. Like, we had these hardcore stories and animations we grew up with.
Now these kids today got Paw Patrol and everything. They need to be disturbed like I was as a kid.
I mean, I feel like they're probably still reading a lot of the same stories. I feel like they're probably still teaching Animal Farm in schools.
True.
Very true. Well, let's go ahead and get deep going into this story. So let's get started. Xavier Dorison is a rising star in French comics. He's the author of several successful series, including Prophet, The Third Testament, and Sanctum, as well as being a noted screenwriter and script doctor. A lot of his works are historical and or political, with Animal Castle being no exception, as he was directly inspired by Orwell's Animal Farm. Which is interesting to note that it was briefly mentioned that Silvio saved all of them from the pigs, who at the end of Animal Farm were the antagonists. So kind of feel like this is a continuation, like a new regime that they're fighting against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing I was realizing it when I first went into this. When I just read the title, I'm like, Animal Castle is this continuation of Animal Farm, and you're right, they do mention it briefly, but aside from that brief mention, there isn't really much in the way of referencing the original source material in Animal Farm.
Yeah, which I think is good, though, because it kind of makes it stand on its own while also alluding to the fact that it's in the same universe, right? Like, if Animal Farm, the way I thought about it is, like, if Animal Farm is the jab of the knife, then Animal Castle is definitely the twist. Like it takes those, I'm serious, like it takes those really hard themes and pushes them to their limit, which I thought was phenomenal because you're already approaching the limit in Animal Farm and they just like, they really took it there.
Yeah, no, this was definitely like a very adult comic that
Mhm.
like kind of gives you these major themes, but in like a nicer way of doing it. Like I was talking to Johnny about how it kind of reminded me of Mouse, like the
Yeah.
comic about the concentration camps and everything that happened during World War II. And it's that same kind of presentation of like a really, really heavy subject, but like kind of making it a little nicer by having it being animals, I guess, in a way.
Until they're like, here's an entire like splash page of Daisy executed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's very appropriate.
With the daisy like shoved in the mouth. I said, oh, that's just yeah, gruesome.
I
Yeah,
think
no, they really went there with like the hardcore violence on this one, but I think you
Mhm.
kind of had to, right? Because you have to show this like brutality. Um,
I definitely agree, and like kind of along that same line, I feel like they did a really good job. Xavier does a really good job of like drawing out these certain reactions from you. He wants like the big reactions, the emotional reactions, the gasps, and like this whole scene with Daisy is very much a part of that. But yet, none of it ever feels cheap. It's a very fine line to tread that you can feel like you're almost manipulating your audience when you swing this heavy for it, and I don't think it ever comes off cheap. It lands every single time, and it lands like a gut punch, exactly the way it's intended to.
It really does. I mean, like just looking. I mean, reading the story, it kind of seems like Miss Bangalore is kind of the starter of the revolution, but it definitely comes down to Daisy because she's the one that has kind of started standing up to the militia and President Silvio at first. So you can see like the images, just like I was just showing here, like the disdain on her face. And that's always one thing I've always found interesting is like when people draw animals, how well that the artists are able to show human emotion and manipulate the beak, the bills of the ducks or the goose. But I know that's getting into the art section later. But yeah, it's very, really interesting. I mean, it's definitely like a very revolutionary story because there's elements in this of like Les Miserables or or the French Revolution, or and elements of Gandhi, elements of 1984. I mean, there's so many like just elements here at play that it just they did a really, really good job of like melding it all together into one cohesive story. You really feel for the animal characters in here as they're being oppressed by Silvio and his militia.
Now,
Definitely.
speaking of the animal characters, was there one that particularly stood out to you and was kind of like your one? Like I followed the rabbit, like I followed him because he
Caesar.
seemed to have such a big change from being like so doubtful, like this isn't gonna
Mhm.
happen. We can't get these guys to be peaceful. I doubt it. To like at the end, he's kind of like pushing her to be like, no, you got to keep going.
I definitely agree with Caesar. I was all about Caesar for that exact reason. Like I love a good kind of redemption arc, and this was like a soft redemption arc, but even still, I feel like they were able to capture that in just a few pages. And I get like this is kind of the cross to bear when you're the leader, but I kind of wanted Miss Bangalore to have her foot on the gas a little bit more. And I know like with peaceful protests, there does need to be restraint, but yeah, like you did find multiple times Caesar was like, we got to keep going. Like we can't give up. We need to find new ways. And so in some respects, he was almost like the pseudo leader.
Yeah, definitely. And it is kind of interesting. And we were talking before we started, me that he started out as like an animal sex worker, really.
Right.
Just like the line of rabbits lined up with their payment in carrots, I thought was really amazing. But yeah, he does kind of become the co leader, conspirator, whatever you want to say. And it is interesting because it's kind of him and the rat, and I forget the rat's name, like Evelar or something like that.
As
Yeah, they're the ones that are kind of push Miss Bangalore into it. So she ultimately, I wonder if she would have had the courageousness to start this if it wasn't for the pushing from Caesar and from the rat and from like how Daisy had stood up
yeah.
to the militia and whatnot.
Yeah, no, I think that was like all of it, right? Because she was like recently widowed, taking care of her two kittens, you know? And it's just like, I think she was just trying to survive. I think all of them were, you know?
I mean,
So it's kind of like,
it was crazy just to see those early panels. Like, you have a cat pulling like giant rocks. Like, what sense does that make? And that just kind of clues you into like how bad things are being run at this
Yeah.
castle farm area.
Which, like,
yeah,
interesting.
no, it sucks.
One of the pieces of writing that I found the most like jarring was the way that Silvio and the dogs are able to like justify everything. Like they can explain everything, and there's so much logic behind the tyranny and the decisions that they make, which is horrifying because tyranny's at its most powerful when it's logical, when you can explain it, because then you have footing to convince someone that what you're doing is just and makes sense and is for the good of people. And that was so upsetting that they were able to explain it so clearly. Yes, this makes sense. Like you have to buy the firewood for X, Y, and Z reasons. Just like really scary, but very true to life. Like the best tyrants have always been able to couch it in logic.
And we have to we have to stay strong. We have to protect the our community because there's wolves outside the door who we never see. Who knows if there even are wolves? Well, there probably aren't. It's just a lie. And he's coming up with like reasons why there are traitors in their midst and scapegoats. So I guess in this case, sheep, maybe. I don't know. But it's just like the sheep bullo. It's like, no, I wasn't there. I was grazing. Like he has a logical reason just to like pass the blame onto like anyone. Like that's anyone other than himself.
Right.
And the dogs are the same way because it's like you see the difference in like how the dogs are living in this nice comfy house with his dog wife and their two kids, and like it's all warm, and then everyone else is out in the cold, and it's like you really get this idea of like they just don't care because it's not affecting them yet.
Yep.
And it's just so like this disparity that's kind of shown, which is like I instantly noticed like the wife and two kids. I was like, see, it's exactly the like opposite of Miss B.
But there's a moment when the father comes home to the wife and kids, and one of the pups is saying, "Daddy, did you save the world today?" He's like, "Yeah, I did." Like you can tell that like there's inner turmoil going on behind that face. Like he's trying to follow orders, but deep down he knows like what he's doing is not correct, is not right.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the turning point, right? Is when they start getting like the dogs to realize like, okay, yeah, we're benefiting from this, but it's actually kind of BS. Like
Yeah.
this things are not right. Like they're not actually doing anything. And I think that is the hardest part, right? Is like peacefully protesting and getting people to peacefully protest. Which I think is something that we definitely struggle with today.
Absolutely. And I think they even explore it really well in the book is like the concept of just like, it's when you're being mistreated and oppressed, it's so easy to let the anger take over and let that drive you and have like a all or nothing mentality. Like, I'm going to lay down my life for this. But like, if you do, that doesn't get you an outcome. And I thought they navigated that exact conversation that you're talking about, Mia, when they were all in the shed and, you know, the ram is trying to be like, we should fight. And his Bangalore's like, no, you don't get it. Like, that's not going to communicate anything. And it takes a leader to do that, right? And that's kind of the whole point they make with Gandhi and the mentions of MLK and Mandela at the beginning is you need a central figurehead that's going to kind of drive the ship forward more or less and not let things just fall into chaos.
Now that Ms. B is, you know, really heading this up and taking charge, do you think that she's going to have that potential to be like the next Gandhi or the next Martin Luther King? Or do you feel like she's still got some like setbacks a little bit?
That's a great question.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I see not this is like a weakness for her, but like a lot of times there are times when they threaten her kittens, and that kind of is like a weakness to like bring her down. So I mean, there's an old saying, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, you know, people fight harder when they have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But to like the fact that she's got a family, I think that might hinder her ability to be an effective leader. I'd say that lightly, but I'm just like she's got something to lose. So I mean, that will always be a weakness for her. They will always be able to get to her that way. It's like, you know, Peter Parker has Aunt May and Mary Jane, so this is like that for her.
Yeah, no,
Well, I
that's
just hope they don't go the same way. Jeez,
No.
Johnny.
I mean, the way the rest of this book is gone, that is certainly a possibility.
I know, right? Like, I'm actually kind of interested in how it goes in the next one, because it's just such a cutoff at the end.
Like, I definitely want her to like grow as a leader, though. I'd like her to see her be able to grow and not have to rely as much on the inspiration of her fellow compatriots. So I think there's still a lot of growth that Miss Bangalore has to do in this series.
Agreed. To some extent, she's more or less like the mouthpiece of the rat. Like, he's telling her how it should be done, and then she basically regurgitates it, which, like, I mean, she's still putting plenty at risk. I don't want to, like, undermine all of the things she's doing and make light of it, but yeah, I think there's plenty of room for growth with her character.
I mean, that's just American politics in general. Like, people like whispering it and then someone else says it.
It really is like a whole portrayal of like American politics right now. It really is. And it's almost kind of scary in that way, because you realize, like, wow, we are in a way no better than animals.
I do like the when they go the route of like making everything about laughter and trying to like make fun of President Silvio. And I think where's the let me find the one image here. I think it was about when they were setting up the metal pan and they'll take your time your shot and hit the bull. Here it is. Oop, yeah. So yeah, the bucket to strike back at the bull, choose your stick. So I think this was great. And even like the animals at first are kind of, you know, wary about like doing it. They're like, oh, I'm gonna be punished for this. But as they start to open up, they become more fearless, where they're painting the daisies all over the place. They've got them all over the walls. They paint them on the leaves when they were, you know, drop them on to everyone, and just showing that like you can take away a person's power if you kind of break them down and hit them where it hurts. And that's a lot of times their ego.
Yeah, definitely.
I loved how, like, by the end of it, they were all lined up wanting to hit that thing. Like, okay, my turn next. And then what are you going to do? Who are you going to arrest? And so they arrest the bucket, which is like the most preposterous thing they could have done was to arrest the bucket. But I mean, it was just kind of like, you get that like idea of them starting to get that there's not much they can really do. Like, they're kind of winning out. It's like they're still finding ways to have fun.
We do have a comment I wanted to throw up. We have Edward Huey saying hello. Mihaha saying, love the series. I just wish there was a larger format edition. The art is so good. Yes, definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I was actually looking for the next one, and I was like, okay, well, where's the next one? I think it's split into two. Because it just ends us on this cliffhanger. And you know what? Based on where it ended, where do you think the story might go in the next? Because there's a whole volume 2 that's out. Where do you think that might be headed? Because we've just seen the destruction. They've kind of gone backwards a little bit, right? Because they gave in to their animal urges. And so I'm kind of interested to see where you guys think this might go. After.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I think there's always room for it to. My concern is that it will just cycle back around, right? Like, you kind of displace President Silvio and you displace the dogs, and you're kind of trying to build your own regime. But creating leadership and creating fair and just leadership is a really, really hard task. Like, having a dictator, honestly, is probably the easiest form of rule, because it's just one person that's like, do this, do that, do this, do that. So I'm worried about like the future of like what leadership looks like in the Animal Republic, and if someone will be able to fill that void in this just way they're looking for, that they've done all of this work, or will they just fall back into old habits and they'll have, you know, another President Silvio, but it's some other different animal.
I mean, it definitely seems like they're going in the, like you said, the wrong direction. They are kind of falling back on their baser instincts, because the majority of the animals, they just want justice for the poor treatment that they've been given over the years, and all they know is they want someone to hurt as much as they've been hurt. So when, well, spoilers. So when Silvio kind of throws one of his own under the bus and the animals act, I'm not going to give too many details about it, and Miss B is like trying to say, no, this is not what we're working towards. So but it's very hard to get everyone unified, and that's one of the things that they say early on. It's like, you know what, the first time that this happened, you know, we lost Daisy, and there was basically a huge massacre. Let me see if I can find the image here. This one. So just that was haunting. I mean, it just, yeah. So, you know, that's one of the things they said. It's like, we need to get organized, and everyone needs to be acting as one front. We need to have like a common goal. But when Silvio throws one of his own under the bus, and then that just goes out the window. So it does make you wonder, like, are they going to stay the path? Are they going to be able to overcome Silvio and his tyranny? I'd like to think that they are, but I don't know. It's like, I want to see the story progress forward instead of backwards. So that's one of the things I'm really hoping to see.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Like, as perhaps true to life as it might be, if the story took a back step, I don't know that that makes entertaining reading material, because then it feels like you're just like in this cycle of the same things over and over again.
Mm.
Also, it's kind of life, I feel like, almost. But that's why, like, so my big concern, I worry that there's going to be like another animal that's going to come out and be like, hey, your way didn't work. Now we're going to go this way because at least we got something out of it. And I just, it's going to be like political parties, and it's just going to be this whole big thing, I feel like. I don't know. There's so much to go into.
I mean, where you go after tyranny, like, it doesn't happen. Like, change obviously doesn't happen overnight, and it's something that kind of there's a long road to positive change like that. I keep trying to equate this to The Walking Dead in a sense, because of like the different leadership styles that you would find in the different communities of The Walking Dead, like Rick's community versus the governor's community versus Negan's community. There's all of that, and like everything that happens and how everything's run. Like, you give up are you giving up your freedom for security, or like, you know, it's a matter of like, you know, the balances of like what you have to give up for freedom.
The Walking Dead was not one on my list that I need to compare this to, but I totally get that, though.
Well, it just made me think, like I said, you know, like if Silvio is ousted from power, like Ashton said, like, what's going to replace it? You know, so it's just, it's, you know, is it going to be someone that's just as bad? And that's what made me think of The Walking Dead, is because they encounter different communities, like, you know, they encounter the governor, terrible person. They encounter Negan, terrible person, but they all kind of think they're doing the right thing.
Right.
So maybe a stretch in terms of like connecting those dots. I don't know, but that's just what the connection that came up in my mind.
I don't think it is that much of a stretch, though. Like, it definitely is a matter of like finding what leadership style works. But I think more importantly, what leadership style works for everybody. Everybody can get on the same page about, and they're like, okay, relatively okay with it. Like, okay enough where you don't feel like you have to stage a coup d'etat, which is the entire plot of this book. So, like, what works for everybody? And then also in terms of like a potential replacement for President Silvio, what is that animal? What does that animal look like? And what does that mean for their leadership, right? Like, President Silvio is a bull. He's massive. He's physically domineering. And that's a theme they revisit multiple times, is like, we can't take him in a fight. He would wreck all of us. But if like Miss Bangalore's the president, like, she would be easy to overthrow by force. So it's such a conundrum.
No, it really is.
But then I'm wondering, like, again, like, what animal is going to replace him? I wouldn't necessarily see it as going up as an animal in size. Like, what's going to be next? An elephant. He's even bigger. We can't topple that. But like, going from an animal of strength to one of smarts, like, what would be an animal that would be shrewd and cunning, though?
Bunnies.
Sure, bunnies. So I don't know. Like, I could see if like President Silvio does get ousted, like, it would be going instead of like the strength route, but like the smarts route, and try and like, you know, trick people into that. Even though like Silvio is doing that in a sense, but he's like very
not successfully.
Yeah, I know, but he's very heavily also relying on his strength mostly.
Right.
Yeah, because the way that they portray him in the book graphically is just pretty terrifying. And I feel like we really need to bring like the art into this because like yeah, that is a big part of it is the art because it really just does tell a story so much. So let's go ahead and jump into adding art to this. Felix Delep is a French artist who's worked on Animal Castle and The Agent, which is also from Ablaze Comics. Couldn't find too much more information about him, but he is phenomenal. Like the artwork in this is absolutely gorgeous. And I want to kind of bring in how his style of art adds to the story. So, for you guys, what was your like major moment, major panel that kind of was like your wow, this is deep and this is like there's a whole sense to how it's drawn even bringing that into like the story.
That's
first?
tough.
Oh yeah,
well,
go ahead. Actually, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know we touched on this earlier, but really Daisy's execution to me was the thing that made it very clear that like this book was not going to hold anything back in terms of the story it was trying to tell here and in terms of how brutal this is from a leadership perspective and the oppression going on in the farm and also how desperate all of the farm animals are, like the state they've reached. I feel like this panel made it very, very clear that like this is not a children's story. This is not going to be, you know, a softer take than Animal Farm was. Like we're all in on what this looks like and how bad it can get.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many panels in there that are just great. Like, and I want to say that they do a really good job of like showing emotion. And I just mentioned this earlier in terms of like how they draw animals. But like Miss Bangalore early on, it has like this look in her eyes that it just like screams like desperation. It's like, I know Daisy, but it's all I was left. Like, what else can I do? This is my lot in life. Like, you can really feel for her and like in this panel alone. I'm just like, oh, and like even like the kittens there just like snuggling up to like just hoping for warmth. I think that was a really powerful panel. But we were talking about Silvio early just a few minutes ago and how he looks massive and imposing. And I mean that's an old like film trick where if you put a camera like low to the ground and look up at something, it makes them appear more dominating and strong. And that's like in this panel, like right here. And I thought was like really, really good. Like you can feel like, you know, you're looking up at him. He's coming across as more powerful and you can see all the animals that up there just kind of like following orders or just doing the best that they can to get by. I think that was really good. Also, let me see if I can find this one. There's I think I did not upload this. There's one shot of the dog when he gets his eye stabbed out by the rat.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I can find it. Here it is.
Concept as Daisy. It's like no holds barred. Like this is a bloodbath.
All right, this isn't the edited picture, but that's it right there. Sorry, Mia, we're covering you up right now, but just like that, the art right there, the pain of it. I just love the composition of these panels, how it's kind of going over like around instead of like just kind of like going straight across like you would see in most comic books. So I thought that was really, really clever. There's just so many different sections of here. It's really hard to pick it going, but the art is really, really well done.
Yeah, so the one that I was going to point out actually kind of has to do with what you were saying about them looking up at him and how, you know, it's always that viewpoint. Because mine is like when they've gone through all of this turmoil and protesting and, you know, they've been doing it and they're like starting to think maybe it's not going to happen. And then they're standing outside and Silvio's finally looking down at them, pissed off from his window as they're just crowded around underneath him, just smiling because they know that they got him. Yeah, and I love that because he's like this foreboding figure and it's just like, yeah, we got you.
Yeah, sorry, I cut him off in the graphic there, but if like you read the comic and you just go down to that next panel, he's just kind of like looking down at everyone from his like ivory tower, just like,
yeah,
what am I gonna do with it?
Oh, your background is like eating the book.
Yeah, there you go. You can see it there. Yeah.
I think another one that was really impactful is the panel of President Silvio drinking literally a bathtub filled with champagne, like a trough of champagne, like 2 panels after everyone else is talking about how starved they are and how they don't have enough money and how bad everything is. And then just to cut to that, it's like, it's such a visceral reaction. It's like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah. What do you want to do, President? Drink.
Yeah.
And the sad
It
thing
is also
is that, going back to the story though a little bit, is that he's doing all of this. He's saying, like, everyone needs to be contributing to the storeroom, and then he just takes the cart and goes off to meet a human to trade it for champagne
Champagne.
and caviar and stuff like that. He's even trading like the dead bodies of the animals for meat, just so that he can get drunk. And just wow. But to like again show like the visceralness of like them, just the animals discarded in the back of that cart. And the other thing I realized that just now looking at this, you don't even see the human's face. Like, you just see like the grin on there. It's like, because they're pretty much inconsequential to the story. It's just like, oh, this just a means to an end to like getting what he wants.
he's just like this demonic figure that's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought that was really crazy that, like, of all the things that they could have traded for, here they're trading, like, food and, I hate to say it, meat and all this other stuff, and yet they want caviar and champagne. Like, the most ridiculous thing of all. And I'm just like, why? What is the point?
To me, that felt like one very clear moment of, like, just like a jab at humanity, like the jab at the way human leaders choose to pick and choose the things they want. Like, that felt like a moment of clarity of like, this might be about animals, but it is literally about human leadership and the way that like oppressors choose to pick vanity and luxury and all of that over, supporting their constituents, supporting, anti-war efforts, supporting, environmental issues, whatever, like, pick your poison. Or throughout history, it's always been about luxury over humanity. And that was a very clear moment of it. Because what does a bull want champagne for? Nothing. But what does a human want champagne for? Because it signals luxury. It signals wealth and success.
Yep.
Yeah, that was like his personal jet, basically, right?
Yeah.
Now, altogether, what kind of are your like overall thoughts about this comic now that you've read it and you've kind of had the moment to like let it kind of digest? What are your feelings overall about Animal Castle?
So
and we're gonna go with Johnny.
Are we going into final thoughts?
Oh yeah. Haha. Haha.
Final thoughts.
Look, I was trying to like smoothly segue into that, and
I need to hear the words. Final thoughts. Art. Story. Okay, I can click the button now. Okay. I like it. Towards the end, as we talked about earlier, it was kind of becoming a little disheartening because they had kind of taken a step back into, like I said, the more baser nature. I would like to see the story progress more. As where it is, it's a good start for what I want to see more out of the animals. So I really like it. I want to see where it goes in part 2. I would like to see more character development. I want to see where Miss Bangalore is going to go. I want to see her grow as a character.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And my take is pretty similar. I really enjoyed it. I think it did a good job of like sucking me in right away. And it very much does read like a companion to Animal Farm. Like, these two are very much one and the same, and they're holding hands. And yet Animal Farm doesn't necessarily feel like required reading for this, which I think is nice. But yeah, to kind of Johnny's point here, I think one of my main takeaways from this book was that freedom is very much this living, breathing thing that needs, constant nurturing and protection in order for it to thrive. And so it feels like that's where this wants to go, is that we're heading in the direction of freedom, and there needs to be kind of a keeper of that. And maybe Miss Bangalore is that person. But so to get there and to not kind of fall back to where we were before, I think they need to push a little bit in that direction, and I would like to see this go in the direction of it being a discussion about the price of freedom and not just like the overwhelmingness of tyranny and oppression. I think we've already kind of covered that, and so there's a next step that needs to be taken. But I couldn't recommend it enough. I think it's phenomenal.
I was just going to say the exact same words. It's a very good story about the cost of freedom and what that takes to acquire.
I honestly think there should be like required reading in high school. Like if you're going to do Animal Farm, then I think you need to do this one, especially with like the format probably, you know, capturing some people who normally wouldn't want to read, you know, a book about it. But then you have this. And then if they just made a Don Bluth-esque movie, you know, it'd be even better. It'll make everyone cry.
Right.
But I feel like this is such an important read for people. And especially with how politics are now, like I think kids need to read this. Like not kids because it is fairly adult, but like starting in high school, I think this has got so many themes that I don't think kids are really getting so much these days.
Or maybe that aren't like quite as accessible. Like, you know, classic literature is classic literature for a reason, and I'm not trying to hate on anything, but with a lot of those older books, the commentary is really, really couched in so many other things that it almost gets lost in the sauce in some way. And this book is very much a show don't tell. Like it's hard to miss what's trying to be said here. So, you know, with there being less barrier to entry to the commentary, yeah, I think there is definitely educational value in it.
Mm-hmm. This is also a good comic to explain to people that not all comics are about superheroes. Because I know like a lot of like the general idea of comic books gets that stigma. Like they're for kids, they're for superheroes. Like no, they're not. There is literally a type of story for everyone, and this is definitely a good point or a good comic to prove that. It's something. It's in this style of mouse or Mao. I don't know the exact way to pronounce it, but again, a story that dips heavily from like real life inspiration. This is not directly from something as terrible as like a Holocaust, but it definitely takes inspiration from past real life events.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that was going to be actually the comic that I recommend. If you kind of liked this and wanted to go more historical and kind of have that same like, I would definitely recommend that because it's yeah, showing the Holocaust from not quite so hard. I mean, it's still harsh. It's a hard read. I accidentally read it when I was like 9 because it was like my dad's comic book collection. I found it. I was like, oh, a comic about mice. And I had no idea what it was about, but at some point I was like, this is not for me. So maybe not at age 9, but I will recommend that everyone should read that one because it's emotional, it's eye-opening, it's yeah, it rocks your world actually just reading it. So what about you guys? Is there something that y'all recommend?
This is not fictional, but it's similar in the vein. They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. Just taking like really, really painful realities and putting them in a way that feels accessible and doesn't shy away from them and shows, doesn't tell. And that's what this does. That's what They Called Us Enemy does.
What about you, Johnny? What do you recommend?
This isn't really so much as heavy as Animal Castle is, but if you like talking animals, Animosity by Marguerite Bennett is also a good read.
Oh yeah.
I picked up the first trade paperback a while back. It's been a long time since I read it, but I remember when I read it, it was like absolutely phenomenal. I think that's by Aftershock Comics, I believe. But really, really well written story. It's just like all of a sudden, all animals gain sentience, at one time, and they just start talking about what's happening to them. It's like a mother cow is saying, "Where are you taking my calf?" as it gets hauled off to the meat farm to be turned into veal, or like stuff like that. And then there's a family pet that like talks to the wife in the family and says like, "Why do you stay with him as he's beaten you?" Like these animals have seen the horrors of humanity and are addressing them directly. So that's again, not as heavy as Animal Castle, but I think it's also a really excellent read.
Okay.
gonna make me become a vegetarian.
Yeah, that's tough. I read the first trade too, and had the same experience. It's like, oof, this is a doozy.
Oh man! All right, I gotta prepare myself with salads after that. Y'all, this was such a fun talk. I really enjoyed getting into this. I'm going to let everyone know that this is your reminder to pick up Animal Castle at your friendly local comic shop. And to find a comic shop near you, simply head on over to comicshoplocator.com. So, before I leave, I want to go ahead and see what everyone's got coming up next. So, Ashton, what do you have coming up?
Free Comic Book Day is coming in hot. It is a week from tomorrow, May 4th, at your local comic shop. There are 48 different books you can get totally for free. Like Johnny mentioned earlier, there is something for everybody in just these 48 books. There's superhero, manga, sci-fi, action, adventure, fantasy, all ages. There's things that are based off of movies and TV shows that you already know and love. Get out there and read a book. I'm also on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok at Free Comic Book Day. If you want a reminder that Free Comic Book Day is coming up, come hang out with me.
Yeah, everyone needs to go to Free Comic Book Day. Go to your local comic shop, dress up,
Yes.
have fun. What about you, Johnny? What are you up to these days?
I'm going to be sitting behind my computer making video content about Free Comic Book Day. I've just wrapped up working on Diamond Select Toys is having their annual Fan Fest event. So this coming Monday, Diamond Select Toys is going to be having a bunch of videos released in terms of like new product that they have coming out throughout the course of the year. There is going to be interviews with some of the artists, sculptors, photographers. That's happening. As far as Free Comic Book Day, I'm going to be out on Free Comic Book Day in the local Maryland area, filming some video at the comic shops just to make a video for next year about what Free Comic Book Day is. So, it's a family-friendly event. Trying to get some people probably going to be going to Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, Maryland, and then hopefully over to Cards, Comics, and Collectibles in Reisterstown, Maryland, because I know Walter and Louise Simonson are going to be doing some signings there. But yeah, Free Comic Book Day, check your local comic shop, see if they're having artists and creator signings, cosplay contests, food trucks, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, no, some of these Free Comic Book Days are like little mini conventions at a comic book shop.
Literally.
It's great. And there's usually deals too.
Oh, the sales are amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all for joining me. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And so everyone here, you've heard it. Make sure to get to Free Comic Book Day at your local comic book shop. Have fun with it. And if you have a graphic novel that you'd like us to talk about, leave a comment below and your choice could be picked for a future episode. And this is also your reminder to follow us at Previews World and Free Comic Book Day on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Now, I sadly have to say goodbye, but I do want to say that heroes are a dime a dozen, but comic fans are priceless. And we'll see you next time. Do you have a suggestion for a graphic novel that you'd like to see discussed on the panel? Leave us a comment and your choice could be picked for a future episode.